Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode 192 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. So today's episode is a recording of the live stream that Gwen and I did just a couple of nights ago on Monday night. This is on the topic of resilience in our grief, and I know you will really enjoy it. I also want to talk about our next live stream. So that will be this next month. And what's funny is if you listen further in, I hadn't quite decided on the date, but now I have. So put this in your calendar. It's Monday, June 19th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we will have Gwen, as always, but we will also have Judson's mom, who was on a previous episode. Her name is Jamie, and she is very excited to talk to you again. The topic will be discussing unhealthy versus healthy coping strategies. And Gwen had a great idea in this episode as to how you all can become involved in that live stream and writing in ahead of time. So I want you to listen carefully to that information. But for now, just sit back and enjoy listening to Gwen and I talk about resilience in grief. Hello. Welcome to another podcast live stream of Always Andy's Mom, of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm here, of course, with Gwen.
Hi.
Gwen was waving and not saying hello, forgetting that the majority of people are going to just listen to this and not watch the video.
Hi, everyone.
So hi, everyone from Gwen. So today we are going to talk about the topic is resilience. And you know what's funny is a few days ago when I went to make the live stream, I sent a message to Gwen and I said, is there something you want me to say in particular? Because we couldn't even remember who came up with a topic, whether it was her or whether it was me. And I don't really know what to say for sure. And I don't know if you were writing me back, in the process of me asking this question. But in the midst of all that, I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to look up the definition of the word resilience. And I love what it said. So what it said in Merriam-Webster, in physics, resilience is the ability of an elastic material to absorb energy, such as from a blow, and release that energy as it springs back to its original shape. The recovery that occurs in this phenomenon can be viewed as analogous to a person's ability to bounce back after a jarring setback. I thought, wow, what a great definition, right? And I just love the visual of thinking about some object hitting really hard against, anything, a ball or the ground or a person or anything, and leaving an impact, and then us trying to recover to your original shape, and whether you can totally do it or you can't do it. But I thought, wow, that is what resilience really is, isn't it?
It is. I'm looking up another definition that I had without having to Google it that talked about the reshaping and the adaptation. Yeah. And I do like the word adaptation because of all that it, means in, we have to learn to adapt. And so, and I love the jarring blow, just really stuck out a lot.
I just loved thinking about it from the physics background, because I hadn't thought about it in that way before, and I should have, because it is a physics kind of term with its origins, but I just loved thinking about it in that way.
I'm going to have to give up looking for my definition that I had written down somewhere, but I might find it.
Oh, I'm sure you probably will find it. Probably will find it too late. But
Yes.
that is a good point too about adapting and the ability to be able to adapt.
Right.
And it is something that we try to teach, right? You try to teach your kids and you try to teach yourself how to be more resilient to be able to handle these life stressors. But then you come across something like this, something like
Right.
death and grief and the loss of your child. And it just doesn't seem like it's on the same, spectrum, right? It's just
Right.
so different from anything you've ever experienced before.
Mm-hmm. And the bounce back is totally different. I mean, that retaking your shape, whatever term you want to use, the adaptation is not an immediate response. It is so much harder with something.
Well, and I don't feel like I'm never going to go back to the same shape I was.
Oh, no, exactly. Not at all.
I will always feel that. And that's what the visual is, that I like to think that I may always be a little bit dented from that huge blow that I took. That's going to be there. It's a part of me. It's something that I feel like you could almost see. I know you can't see it from the outside, but it feels that way.
Right. I like that. You said something else about the length of time, or this is different. Oh my goodness. I'm worried about my brain. I just can't even. I can't bounce back on my thoughts the quickly as I used to. I have to write them down, but it'll come to me.
Yeah. Well, keep a pen handy.
I do. I have one right here.
All right. Well, another thing is, when I made that stream, I started thinking about things that are resilient. And if people found out about this by looking on my Instagram or my Facebook, you can see that I used a visual of a little flower, almost looks like a tiny little daisy, growing up through some asphalt. So through some cracked, not blacktop, but asphalt there that was cracked in a million places. And then just this one lone little flower came up, because I put in resilience images, and that's one that came up, is a resilient little flower growing up through a road somewhere. So anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. And
That's awesome.
I've got to tell you what happened this weekend. And I told you I was going to tell this story, but I wouldn't tell you what it was. So if you look today on my Instagram, just a couple of hours ago, I posted a picture of a tulip. And that tulip was from my yard. So we have a place up north. That was Andy's favorite place in the whole world. And I've talked a little bit before about this magnolia tree that's in the backyard. And it's just a beautiful magnolia tree. And I think about Andy with it. I mean, first of all, he loved being up there. But the second reason I think about it is it always blooms every spring, these beautiful, beautiful blooms. And then right around the anniversary of his death in mid to late August, it blooms again, but only a few. And it just makes me think of Andy. And I think the first time is we went back up right after he died to get some stuff and take the boat in and whatever. And that had a few flowers on it. So it made me think that it was like a little gift from Andy, these few little blooms on that magnolia tree. And so every year this census happened. So this week we're up there and the magnolia is in full bloom and it's looking amazing. And yesterday, which was Mother's Day, which I totally ignored. I didn't let my family celebrate it really at all. My father-in-law came up to me and said, the day before we saw me, and said, "Happy Mother's Day." I said, "I'm really not doing that this year." He's like, "Okay." So I gave my mother-in-law a Mother's Day present, but as far as me, we did not celebrate. But anyway, yesterday I'm walking inside and I look over, and underneath the magnolia tree is one bright red, beautiful tulip.
Oh.
And we have no tulips in our entire yard. No one's planted that tulip. I have no idea where it came from. It is just coming up through a pile of leaves, because the leaves always collect down in that corner. No grass ever grows down in the corner under that magnolia tree. So you can see all these dead leaves.
Right.
And one beautiful, perfect tulip coming up. And I just thought, And see, now I am going to cry because I didn't think I would, but I just thought it was a little Mother's Day present from Andy.
Andy.
Yeah.
I did too.
Yeah. And so anyway, I wouldn't let anyone celebrate Mother's Day, but I think Andy did.
Andy did. I'm so glad you took a picture of it.
I know.
And
what's funny is we were driving home. We got in the car. We're in the car and we're pulling out of the driveway. And I said, stop. I didn't take a picture of the tulip.
Mm-hmm.
And so Eric stopped the car and I ran around the back in my stocking feet because I didn't even have my shoes on to go take a picture of that tulip because I just needed that tulip. The fact that it was on Mother's Day.
That is so beautiful.
I thought so
and that
too.
you had Googled the images of resiliency and then there it is.
And I got the lone flower, right? I got the flower and that's what I had used. And it was almost like that's why it was given to me as a tulip, right? I just feel like God and Andy somehow worked that out. I don't know.
They sure did.
I don't know how they did, but I just feel like I needed the tulip yesterday.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Oh, and many times we say about, when we talk about joy returning or different things, I always say your whole day or your whole life isn't going to be filled with joy, but you can have joyful moments. And what maybe just think of, you're not going to have a whole garden of flowers, but you can have one that you need. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Anyway.
I did write down and remembered what I was going to say is when you were talking about the definition of resiliency, Dr. Hoy, he's a professor at Baylor and he teaches in their medical school to medical students about death and dying. And he says resiliency is the norm, not the exception when he's talking about grief. And
well, that's true. Yeah.
It is the norm. I mean, we can expect, even though we don't know what it looks like, we can expect to have a new formation. We can expect to adapt and to bounce back at some level. We can expect to bloom in some fashion, right? If we want to use the one flower. Again, not a whole garden or the way you were before, but there is that bounce back that does happen.
It's funny because I think in some ways you don't like to think about it that way. And and others see it in you, right?
Right.
I think of how many times other people have said to me, oh, you're so strong. I can't believe how strong you are. All of this stuff. And it just makes me kind of mad because I'm like, I'm not strong. I'm weak and whatever. But that is the resilience, right? And the other people are seeing the resilience, even though sometimes you don't feel it. It is there.
Right.
Yeah.
And that you are shining something to the people around you. And to you, it doesn't feel like strength. It feels like just survival. Yeah. But others see it as, wow, you're getting up every day. You keep on living, keep on doing. And really that's all we can do. We just get up and say, okay, I'm just going to do this next thing here. And, but other people can see that every day you're working hard at that and they see your growth and see things in you that you can't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I do want to take a moment here too, because I forgot this on our last live stream, but I had said that I wanted to thank people who had donated to the podcast because I kind of did that. I did that a few months ago towards the end of the year. Eric kind of made up a list and I just got a new donor that's donating through Patreon and I'm very excited. And so I just want to say thank you to Stephanie for doing that. Erin, who's doing that wonderful retreat down in Mexico, she has donated, which I really appreciate. And then I have Karen who donated through Give Butter and she's now going, it's funny, it kind of sparked up a conversation and she's going to come on and share her story. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank yous to those three wonderful women who've donated some money to
that's wonderful.
Always Mom charity through Gift Butter or Patreon or however means you want to do it. But just thank you because it does mean a lot and it really does help kind of to be able to keep going. So thank you.
Right. That's wonderful.
So I know now you had a few different things that you wanted to talk about with resiliency, because of course
I do.
you've got your list of things. So
Right. Well, just giving some skill sets to what is resiliency. So we've talked about the definition, but I like to give bereaved people just some skill sets. And the cool thing about a lot of the listeners is they're going to be able to go, oh, I do that. I just didn't see it as resiliency.
Right.
And the very first one is self-awareness. And I think being aware of what your limits are. And it can look like, I can't watch when there's a shooting in our country. I can't tune in. That's self-awareness to say, I can't take that on and think about, because every mom is thinking about it through the lens of knowing what those other parents are experiencing that day. Right.
Yeah. It's terrible.
I had one woman say to me, there was an issue at the cemetery where someone had stomped on the flowers in the grave and she could see the footprints. And she said, but you know what? I couldn't fight it. I couldn't fight it. That's knowing your limits. That's having an awareness. And so it's kind of like knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are. And she just knew right then that it was a fight that she just didn't have in her to fight. So I think that awareness. Another piece of that is when you have like mountains of paperwork or yard work or thing to do, we have to almost be aware of what motivates me to get something done. Because when we're bereaved, our to-do list just it's like, that's horrible. But so the skill of resiliency says, if I have this list and I'm overwhelmed with it, what can motivate me to get it done? What is my reward or my motivation for doing it? And, it can be like, okay, if I accomplish 3 things on my list, I can go get a pedicure, or I don't know what your reward or motivation is. But so I think awareness is just a really key thing.
Yeah. Awareness of what you can and can't do and what's just too much. And
I think
finding ways to get the list done, whether it be you or someone else.
Someone else. Yep. I was thinking that too. Or, hiring a lawn company because it's just too much, or whatever that looks like. And I know that awareness is something that we also have to speak out. Like when you become aware that you can't maybe do something, or
do Mother's Day, for example. Right.
That's a perfect example.
When you were saying that, I'm like, that would be like me. I can't do Mother's Day. What was really funny is that Eric, because Valeriano, is my foster son, and he's obviously moved out of the house and Mother's Day, and he sent me this lovely text, "Happy Mother's Day, you're the best," or something really, really sweet. And I was like, wow, that's the only time anybody has ever said Happy Mother's Day. Like, because the kids didn't really say Happy Mother's Day to me because they were with me, the other two. And Eric goes, well, you made it pretty clear that you didn't want to celebrate Mother's Day. And like, well, that's true. Yes, that's good.
Right.
So
but
if they
also don't want to be ignored,
Day, it was because of me. They were paying attention that mom does not want to celebrate Mother's Day.
Yeah. And I think somebody else agreed with you there. They said that's exactly what I said to my dad. I ignored and avoided Mother's Day.
Yeah. Well, and it's what you needed, right? If that's what you need to get through your day. When I had even I've got a little bereaved moms kind of chat group or whatever, and they were, and last Sunday was bereaved Mother's Day.
Yes.
And so what were you doing for bereaved Mother's Day? And people wanting to know what they're doing for Mother's Day. And I thought, man, I just ignored the whole lot of them. I mean, I ignored bereaved Mother's Day. I ignored Mother's Day. Like, it was just too much for me to do either one of them. Yeah. So I don't know if that was the right thing or the wrong thing, but for me, I just couldn't do it. And I could get through the day much better if it's just a Sunday. And last Sunday was just a Sunday, and this Sunday was just a Sunday. And that's just what I had to do for me. And it doesn't mean that that's right for everybody, but it certainly was right for me.
Exactly. And if you have so many other days to survive, birthdays and other significant days, it's like when you said Bereaved Moms Day, I that's awesome. And I love that we celebrate that. But one of the things that we're getting into in our country is there's a day for everything, every illness, everything. And it sometimes gets to be too much. And people just go, I can't have a label on today. Like you said, I just need it to be a Sunday.
Right. I had somebody that wrote to me that is going to come on the podcast later this summer that I think May 6th or something is like National Moya Moya Day, and her son died of Moya Moya disease, which is a pretty rare disease that most people have never heard of. And I had no idea. I had no idea that was May 6th. Right. I mean, it's like there are a lot of other days around. Maybe it was even I can't remember. Is it the 5th or the 6th? But it was, there are just so many. And for that mom, that's a big day for her.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
But for most people, they don't even know that day was anything.
Yep. For sure. Then the next one that beyond self-awareness is mindfulness, which is a little bit different. It's actually being fully present and aware of, where we are and what we're doing, and not maybe overreacting to what's going on around us. So every time you bring awareness to what you're experiencing through your senses, you're practicing mindfulness. And what we mean by that is like, if you're feeling tired, sluggish, exhausted, to bring awareness to that says, but I'm grieving, and grieving means you're tired, exhausted and sluggish. And then all of a sudden it helps us because then we're mindful that it's not just a feeling, it's a true emotion that we are experiencing and living through that. So we can be mindful of the fact that, hey, I feel this way. It's kind of like, I was just thinking of this with my mother who's aging, that she'll say, oh, I feel this way and feel that way. And I have to kind of remind her, you are 86 and a half.
Yeah.
And then she becomes mindful of, oh, she said, I feel 50 something. But I am 86 and a half, right? So that mindfulness of that. And then I was actually thinking as I was, preparing for tonight and just being mindful of things. One of the thoughts is, in a few weeks, we're at Memorial Day.
Yeah.
And Memorial Day before the death happened was just a day off with, hot dogs and a picnic or an extra day. But now it means something different. Yeah. And, that's oftentimes when people, decorate at the cemetery and, do those things, but it's more than parades and picnics. It's a time to pause and remember. And I think just to be mindful of what it means to you now going forward and how you're going to pause and remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's just I think it's a hard time of year for everybody. It's a really hard time of the year for me because so many of our friends now are still graduating. I've got a niece on one side of the family graduating from high school, a nephew on the other side of the family. Of course, Andy should have graduated last year. It's just all those things I don't want to do any of that. But it makes it a hard time of year. And I think just spring in general, when you see all this new life.
For sure.
Every spring, everything is so beautiful and the flowers are beautiful and everything's like waking up and the birds. You can hear me in the background. I'm outside today. But it's just such a beautiful time that when you're grieving and sad, it can feel even worse. I think when it doesn't like agree. I can remember on Andy's funeral day, all I wanted was it to rain. I just wanted it to rain and be cloudy because I wanted the weather to match me.
Right.
And
it's so true of spring. Right.
Yeah.
That's
it's
so
not
true.
Matching your mood.
We don't match. And, the rest, that new life and the symbols of that just do not match how we're feeling at all.
Yeah. I mean, one of my, the women I work with went and picked up her son from his first year of college yesterday. And she was kind of late into work today because she was getting him settled back at home. And like, that should be me. Yeah. That should be me, but it's not. And
so then you were mindful that this is going to affect me. This is right. This is going to hit.
And I think just being mindful that this time of year is just really, really challenging. And that's why I think Mother's Day, I just couldn't do this on top of everything else, on top of just having Andy's birthday and the graduation's coming up and all of this. It was something extra that I just couldn't do.
Well, as you said that, Mother's Day tends to be the focus on us. And I don't want to put feelings on you, but as you were saying that, I'm wondering if you were feeling a bit of, but I don't want you to see me, because if you saw how I really feel, like I don't want the focus on me or someone to ask me what I want, because anything that you would want is not found at Target. It's not found wrapped in a little,
Well, and I've had a hard time with Mother's Day since my own mom died, right? When I was in college.
True. Yes.
So that was very hard then. So I've had a hard time for a long, long time. I'm 49 years old now, and she died when I was 21. So that's a lot of Mother's Days that I've gone without my mother. Usually I've sent always flowers to my grandma on this day, but my grandma now died last year. So I don't have that either. And it's just, it's just a hard thing, but I think it is good to have that little bit of mindfulness about that. I mean, it very much goes with that self-awareness, doesn't it?
Yep, it does. It really, really does. But
they're not the same, but they go hand in hand for sure.
Right. But and there's skills to develop. And I think I just want to keep saying that, like, you have to develop them. You have to give energy to them. You have to say, wait a minute, I got to hone in on, where am I at? What am I feeling? What do I want to do on this Sunday?
Right.
And again, speak them, and let others know. That's what the key thing when I talk about the holidays. That's it. You have to figure out what you want and then speak it.
Well, and I've got a friend of mine that she wrote that she just was super honest. Her two daughters were, of course, wanting to celebrate Mother's Day, and she was having a really hard time, and they probably weren't quite understanding that. And she just was really honest with them and said, this is really hard for me. I'm missing your brother, and it's just not the same as it was. And I think, and she said they really appreciated her honesty, just being open about what she couldn't do and why it wasn't going to be just all smiles on Mother's Day.
Right. And, there's some people probably listening who go, I don't have a problem speaking how I feel. But there's a lot of people, that's a foreign concept.
Right.
I mean, it was really, this is just maybe a silly example, but a couple weeks ago, we were supposed to go to a fundraising dinner on a Friday night. My husband came home and he's like, are we going to get ready and go? And I just had an emotional, stressful week. There was just a lot going on. And I said, I don't want to go. And that's not me, first of all, but it's also not me to be disagreeable. I just go with the flow.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I didn't want to go is because at a it's not like going out to dinner with just your family because you can sit by just your family.
Yeah.
At a fundraising dinner, you have to sit with other people.
Yeah, right.
I said, I don't have anything in me.
No.
But what I found surprising,
those things are so hard for me now.
Yeah. What I found so surprising is that it was foreign for people to hear me speak out something like that. Wow, I can't believe you're saying that. So, I just want to be tuned to people who others aren't expecting that from you sometimes when you go, no, I don't want to do that. Or I can't.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Yeah. So much so that when we talked about going out to dinner over Mother's Day, he said, now, are you sure you want to go out to dinner? You didn't want to go that Friday night. I said, that wasn't dinner.
No.
It was people.
That's what sitting with a bunch of strangers.
Yeah.
Trying to get your money too. No.
Right. Yeah. Another skill is self-care. And the one, when I said a lot of people are going to have some of these skills already set, but self-care looks different for everybody. And it's practices that maintain or improve your health. And so some people, to maintain or improve their health, they run a marathon. For other people, it's just, some movement or something. But the other part of self-care,
or taking a bath. I mean, taking a bath is self-care.
Right? Yes. Walks, going to the beach. I can't believe how many bereaved people, because my, news feed on Facebook is full of bereaved people. How many of them go to the lake shore here in Michigan? For those of you who don't know, we have beautiful Great Lakes here, and they're not that far for many of us, within an hour's drive.
Yeah.
And how many people that water and just being at the beach is a big form of self-care for them, comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it could be reading, music, art. But I think that there's a few key things with this is it's making an intentional effort to practice some of that. And I think when we're bereaved and we are exhausted and overwhelmed, we lose our drive and our, we have to be intentional. And I know for you, Marcy, you said last time when we were talking about physical reactions to grief that you had to make an intention to get a little bit healthier because you noticed you weren't healthy. Yeah. And so,
that brings us back to our last live stream, obviously, when we were talking about that. And then what Erin's doing too.
Yeah.
Erin's retreat is her retreat again, the last few days of October, first few days of November is all on self-care.
Yeah.
I mean, that's her whole focus on doing that. So anyway, if you want more information on that, you can listen to that last live stream or go on Yoga with Erin B.
Or just follow her on Facebook. She puts up the pictures and I think, it looks like it will just, even the environment itself will be refreshing. I know. The other part about self-care though, is it's all about balance and it takes time. And that's the other part, is that we have to be intentional with our time. But I think another part of self-care goes back to after you've been self-aware and you're mindful of, where you're at and what you can handle. We have to, I think telling others is a part of self-care. So that Friday night for me to survive, and after the week that I had, that was a form of self-care. Me saying, I'll go to Arby's, but I'm not going to that dinner.
Right.
So
you're right. It's 100% of self-care.
That was a good decision because it's along the lines of right now, what is best for me? Yeah. Right now, and all of us have to fill in that blank of right now, what is best for me? And that's a sign of resiliency.
Well, and I don't think I've talked to you about what I wanted our next live stream to do. Did I?
No.
No. Okay. No. Well, our next live stream, we're going to have another guest come on for part of it because we're going to talk about unhealthy coping versus healthy coping.
Yeah.
And because she's Jamie, she's Judson's mom, and she was on a while ago. And she's another yoga instructor actually, but she wanted to talk about the coping because she felt like she did such a bad job herself early on of doing unhealthy coping and is now really working on healthy coping, that she wanted to kind of come back on and talk about that a little bit. And I thought that would be a great topic. So it goes along with your self-care, but it goes in a little bit of a different direction by really, really talking about how badly we can mess this up.
Yeah.
Right.
And we could almost rename that episode's Confessions to a Grief Counselor.
Yeah.
Because I hear those, because they whisper like, I've been drinking more, or I've been shopping a lot, or, and so I hear them often, some of those unhealthy.
I like that title. That may be the title.
No. I think people might be expecting a little more juice than that. But this is all we got is, confessing our unhealthy coping things. But how we do bounce back and how we do adapt is the skills we're talking about is awareness. Yeah. The guest you were just talking about, who's going to come on, what is her first name? Jamie, you said?
Jamie. Mm-hmm.
Jamie's awareness.
Yeah.
Is what's going to lunge her forward is, wow, I'm aware of how I was not making good choices for me.
Well, and the fact that she wants to come back on really does show, I think, how far things have come for her and how things have really changed, for her to want to share that in that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm looking forward to having her on.
A few things down because I have some definite thoughts about that. I mean, right away, my mind just fills with
I
stories,
know.
things
And I
people.
hadn't even told you. So now
No,
all the listeners that are listening right now,
yeah.
they all know
Well,
exactly
maybe we
when
should
Gwen find out.
call it a confession of our unhealthy coping skills and have them send them in so we can, make sure we address some of them. Or
Ooh,
yeah,
I like that
have a
thought.
little confession time.
Yeah, sending in
Yeah,
some confessionals. Ooh, this is good. We've got to
yeah.
find our exact date. I was kind of looking at a few dates, so
Okay, well,
it
we'll
should
get
be
that
towards
on
the end of June, I think.
there. Yep.
So anyway,
Okay.
that's when it should be, kind of last week or second to last week of June. So just watch for that to come, but we'll give you more on that a little bit later. But I like that idea
Mhm.
of doing that.
Yeah. Well,
I don't
that's
know if anybody that's watching right now has any questions. You can certainly pop any questions up at any time. I know, Gwen, you have another thing to talk about even after self-care, but I don't know if you're done with the self-care topic yet.
well, I was just going to ask you, what is one thing, if I were to ask you, that you think you do for your self-care?
Well, recently, it's been the physical activity, I think.
Mhm.
I know it has. I think I talked about this on my last one. I got this app, my Apple Watch, that I'm a little bit probably too obsessed with making sure that I get all of my exercise in every day.
Oh, were you
I
the one
sa-
to talk
I'm,
about closing your
I'm
circle?
closing my circles, right? Because
Mhm.
I have my circle set that I have to burn like 700 calories and work out at least 45 minutes, and it's so, and I'm a little bit of a nut on it. The other day, I told you I had my in-laws over, and it was after 8 o'clock, and I still had like 300 more calories than I needed to burn. And I was like, I just put on my coat and my shoes. I'm like, oh, I'm going for a walk. I'm just leaving. And then Eric goes, well, I want to go with you. And I thought, well, then I guess we're kicking your parents out of our house right now. I mean, they were happy. They were fine.
Yeah.
They had been there a long time, but it but I do feel like I just want to keep doing that for myself. And I have been feeling quite a bit better
Yeah.
doing that. I also, I've been seeing my therapist pretty regularly again, which I wasn't doing for a while. And I do think I'm better when
Mhm.
I do that regularly. And then I've been seeing a trainer a couple of days a week too. So I'm trying to take better care of my body and my mind.
9. Yeah. Yep.
And then when things like Mother's Day come up and I don't want to deal with them, I just don't. So,
Right. That's good.
which may be okay or not okay. I don't know. I think probably different people have different opinions on that, but it's what
Mhm.
it was, good self-care for me.
Yeah. Okay. Um, and again, you mentioned people, writing in, they can write in what they do for self-care too. That would be interesting to
Yeah. Yeah. If anybody's got some great things that they do for self-care,
yeah.
write them in the chat here now and see. Okay.
So you were asking me what another one is? Is that what you
Yeah.
wanted? Okay.
Mhm.
Here's another one. Positive relationships. And asking
Oh,
yourself, are the relationships around you healthy, positive? You know, who supports you? I mean, they care for us and we care for them. Are those like, is that the yin and yang that you have going on? Like, I can care for you, you can care for me. Because in grief, you really have to guard relationships.
yeah.
Like, you have to watch who you spend time with. Because I say this about workplaces too. And I'll give the workplace example and then over to grief. In a workplace, if your lunch hour and who you spend time with is a bitch fest
Yeah.
versus an uplifting, we either walk at lunch or we, talk about our life and or is it we sit at lunch and talk about, can you believe she said that? And there's a
Yeah.
real big difference of the positivity in your day. Well,
Mhm.
in grief, you have got to guard that. If the people you are around are constantly negative and I can say the same thing about support groups. Sadly enough, there's some support groups who the ceiling is so low on any kind of positivity or healing
Yeah.
that we're never growing anywhere.
Yeah.
You have to have hope that, and have people speaking life into you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, And, the power, and I think we maybe talked about this last time, but, the life-giving power of a good friendship is huge.
Mhm.
Huge.
Well, and this would be a good time to bring up, people have heard certainly that I have been doing a virtual support group through Starlight, right? And some of the women in the group have been, this is ending their second year on, and it's been really amazing. And so what happened was we started to get really, really close, right? We're doing these support groups, and I love the fact that Starlight has the curriculum that obviously you helped be a part of way back when that was written. And it's all very hopeful, and it just really fosters good friendship. And so several months ago now, way last fall, some of the women started getting the idea of, we need to get together in person. And so this is obviously not everyone that's in the support group now, because new people have joined and continue to join, and I want more people to keep joining. But that kind of core group that we had, minus a few that couldn't come, we had 11 of us met in Ohio in person, and it was amazing. I mean, it was amazing. I just felt like, I had somebody say that it felt like a family reunion, and I think it did. It felt like a family reunion.
Better than
I
a family
felt
reunion.
like I knew all of them already. And, they were asking me at Starlight a little bit about what it was like. And I said, what was funny was I thought I knew them all. And then I met them, and I did. I didn't know them all, because nobody was any different than what I thought they were going to be, because everyone was so genuine and just positive in their friendship online, and that just transferred in real life. It was,
there's so many
I can't even tell you how uplifting that was. It was hard, I think, when we had to return home by ourselves and we didn't have each other. But that weekend, we met a Thursday through Sunday, and those days together, wow, that is just exactly what you're talking about.
They fuel you for the rest of the year.
Yes.
Almost. Because I have girlfriends that I get together with, my closest friends, and it fuels me for a long time. Like, I can live off that for a long time. But the other part, what you were just talking about, is what I believe the scriptures meant when they said of a strand of 3 cords is not easily broken. Like, there is something really tight and bonding and powerful and uplifting that happens when you're bound, and woven together in other people's lives.
Yeah.
And
some, I had met half of them before, because I've of course gone places and met people, and a few of them were from Michigan, and so I'd met about half. But some of these women flew in, they'd met nobody. One of them talked about how she cried on the way to the airport, she was crying on the airplane, she was panicky, what if this is not work? And of course it was amazing. You don't know. You don't know until you're just experiencing it. But they even made t-shirts, and the t-shirts said "Standing in the Gap," because we're standing in the gap for each other, and all our kids' names were on the back. And
do you know how jealous some people are going to be right now? I think
I know. You know what though? The support groups start back up in the fall. Let's go.
They can. And I want to take it a step further though, Marcy, for a minute. So you can't recreate, when people come in, they might not find that same connection. However, you don't have to find it in the same way that you found it or in that group. People can create a support group. They can gather. I know women, even through your podcast and places that are meeting at a library in Chicago. I know our friend up way in the Upper Peninsula who's meeting with moms, and they knit and talk, and they get together. I know women who have some moms who quilt, and they talk about their grief while they quilt. And
I had one on just recently from Colorado, and she's got a group that gets together. I know there's a group in Alberta that I don't know if they are anymore, but for a while they would gather every week and they would listen to my podcast together, and then they talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and those can go beyond whether the group meets or not, like when people meet in circumstance like that. And how I know that is I've been doing grief support groups for 36 years. And I will go into a restaurant in East Lansing and they'll say, Gwen, over here, it's your grief group from, 1992. And they're still getting together once a month at a restaurant. And I happen to see them and I'm like, seriously, you are still getting together. But I also had an experience I probably never told you about. I'll be real quick. But a funeral director came into my office when I was a counselor at the funeral home. And he said, Gwen, one of the women in your group, her husband died. And I said, he told me her name. And I said, she's not in my group. And he said, well, when I made the arrangements with her for her husband's death, she said her closest support was her group from the funeral home. And I said, she said she is close with these people. And I said, she's not in my group right now. She was in my group 16 years ago with some other bereaved moms when her son died. And for 16 years, she still calls them her group from the funeral home, but they haven't physically been in the group with me for 16 years. But those few moms
still were meeting.
Yes. So when her husband died, she had them. She had that cord and that strand that can't be broken because she built it. And I think the other thing is these strands that we're talking about, we can build in our grief to help with our resiliency, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But one of the sermons that I heard on friendships talks about the value of growing those friendships before you get in hard times. Like we should be building those friendships before we need them. And I thought that was an interesting part of the sermon.
It's so funny because you just don't know though when the hardship happens, who's going to still be there.
Yeah.
Because it's so often not who you think.
Yeah.
You would have asked me. I mean, you maybe did. I know when I was meeting with you in those early days and people said something about how, your friends may change, your friends may fall away. Some of them, I thought, not mine. They are solid. And they're not the same though now.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I didn't know that at the time because it really would have made me feel even in more despair than I was. But
I'm going to go out on a limb because we've talked about gender and we have a lot of, a lot of our moms are married and we're, in relationships. The fact that when I heard this sermon and I'm thinking back on it, he was talking about male friendships too, and about developing those before you need them, because I think trust has to develop and they're there for each other rather than I can see that. And with women, we bond over the experience rather than on the trust and knowing each other because we're a little different. Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. I have to go back to what Jody said in one of the comments here, because actually, Jody, I relate to that. She said, I play older worship music to help pour peace back into my heart, my mind, and my soul. I find it helps really remind me that God cares and that there is an eternity where we will all be whole again, be whole again. I 100% agree. And I've met a lot of people. I mean, music just pouring into your heart really is a great form of self-care. So I'm glad she mentioned that.
I am glad you brought that up too, because I was bringing that up just in the support group again. We met last week and the topic was on self-care. And I had brought up the fact that because I sing in the worship band, I help lead the worship band. And that brings so much to me as when I am singing those songs. Now, those aren't older songs. Those are more contemporary ones, but they just allow my heart to just open up so much that just speaks to me. So I totally agree with that. And I'm very, very glad you brought it up because I can't believe I forgot when you asked me the question of what do you do for self-care, because singing really is one.
Yeah, when she says older worship, though, I think I can relate in the fact that a lot of the old time gospel music that my parents listened to really talked about heaven a lot. Like my first day in heaven, walking down the Golden Avenue, I'll be looking left and right, to see the saints that are there. There's a lot about that hope of heaven that's just was in a lot of those
Well,
old.
and I've spoken to people too that they just like the hymns too, even older hymns. They feel comfort in those. So whether you mean the older gospel style or hymns, I mean, either way, whatever really speaks to you, right?
Yeah. Well, then that leads us to lastly, the last skill that I have for tonight is purpose.
Oh,
I need purpose.